Hi, I'm Alana Thibault, and I'm a registered psychologist working at Bow Valley College in the counseling and specialized support area. Today we're going to be talking about dealing with anxiety during job interviews. This will help you to manage worry and concerns you have during job interviews, but it's not specifically going to address things like what kind of questions you can expect on a job interview and things like that. More so how to deal with the worry and anxiety that comes when being in an interview. So the first thing we're going to talk about is putting some things into perspective. And let's start with anxiety. A lot of people think that feeling anxiety is a sign that something's wrong, but it's really not. Anxiety is a completely normal response to a stressful situation. In fact, the more stress you have, the more anxiety you're likely to feel, and that is completely normal. Anxiety is basically giving you a message about what's happening to you in a given situation, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. For instance, if you think of a sprinter in a race, they have that nervous energy that keeps them focused and ready to go. And they're not thinking that they're worried or that it's debilitating them from being able to perform. They're thinking, I'm going to channel this energy. And sometimes that's what anxiety can be looked at as. For example, if you think about a group of people that are about to run in a big race, they have a lot of nervous energy within them that keeps them focused and ready to act when that pistol fires for them to run. So it's not that having anxiety is necessarily a bad thing. It can be used to focus your attention and put your energy where it's going to help you best. The second part about putting things into perspective is talking about the interview itself. So interviews are really just opportunities. You have the opportunity to tell them what makes you so great for the job, and also for you to learn what makes that job so great for you. So basically, you're going to be having a conversation with people who are eager to know about you and how you can help them. During the interview, you will be asked to talk about something on which you're the expert. You're going to be asked to talk about yourself. Sometimes when I talk to people about their anxiety in job interviews, I remind them that what's really going to be happening in that interview is a two-way conversation between respectful adults. Nobody wants to see you fail, and you're not on trial, so nobody is going to try to shame you or embarrass you. But if you go into the interview with that fear, it's going to be very hard to keep perspective. The next thing we're going to talk about is whether or not the anxiety is matching the situation. So fear versus reality. Some of the more common things that I hear about when people talk about their anxiety during job interviews is that if they're feeling anxious, they think they're not normal and therefore they're not coping. The reality is that everybody does feel a degree of nervousness, and this is completely natural. Even the interviewer can feel nervous. And as we talked about before, nervousness might just mean readiness and eagerness. The second thing I hear a lot of is, I'm going to mess it up and I'm going to ruin everything. Well, that's not very realistic either. No one expects you in that interview to be perfect. They do expect you to be prepared, however. So even if you do make a mistake, that doesn't mean that the interview is completely ruined. Another fear that I hear about is about not getting the job. But when I dig a little bit deeper and talk a little bit more with people who have that worry, I discover that the fear isn't so much about not getting the job, it's the things that come from not getting the job. This quickly spirals from I won't get the job to I'm worried I won't be able to pay my rent, I'm worried I'm going to live in the streets, I'm worried I'm going to lose the kids, and things can spiral completely out of control to the point where they're acting on that fear rather than on the fear about not getting the job. The reality is, you might not get the job, and this might lead to disappointment, but I promise it is not going to lead to death on the spot. It never has happened yet, and it's not something you need to be worrying about. So let's look at stress reduction and how you can control what you're able to control. I talk about using the JUMP system. So that includes judging the situation accurately, understanding the fear and worry, managing the stress, and planning and practice. So let's look at the J, judging the situation accurately. You are going to meet new people who want to know all about you, but you're not going to be interrogated. Next, we're going to look at the U, understanding fear and worry. Often when I ask people what they're worried about with the job interview, they'll tell me they're worried about everything, but that's not really true. It's better if you can identify what's specifically worrying you about the interview, because identifying the problem will help you to create a solution. Let's look at some of the examples that are here. So for instance, Saying, I'm scared about the interview isn't nearly as focused as saying, I'm scared I'm not going to be able to answer the questions well in the interview. If you can be specific about what your concerns are, you can get a specific solution to the problem. However, if you remain very broad with your worry, the approach to making solutions is also going to be broad and not nearly as useful. And now let's move on to M, managing the stress. It's useful to keep in mind what you do control rather than ruminating on the things that you cannot control. The more you can manage your stress, the more you can reduce your anxiety. You want to put your best self forward that day, so you want to be able to control things that contribute to that. You control whether or not you have breakfast that day, whether you get enough sleep, and what you allow yourself to think about as you get ready for that interview. You want to be very specific about what you want to accomplish. It's better to think about the components of your goal rather than just focusing on the goal itself as a whole. So for example, saying that you want the job is not as focused as saying, I want to show that I'm informed and intelligent in the interview. I've chosen for this slide a picture of a puzzle. This demonstrates that there are pieces that get put together to make the puzzle complete. If you can identify what components create a good interview experience, then you can ensure you're meeting each requirement. Let's talk about the last part of JUMP, and that's P for planning and practice. So let's look at the first part of that, which is planning. Bottom line is, last-minute planning means last-minute problems, and nobody wants that when they're going into a job interview. So you want to be planning ahead, which will reduce your stress. The great thing about planning is it's completely in your control. Surprisingly, even though people have the most control over this situation, it tends to be one of the last things people actually want to do. The things you want to plan ahead are things such as what you're going to wear, and you want to have that prepared ahead of time, which includes actually trying on what you plan to wear. So it's highly advisable to do a dry run and to time it out, which includes knowing where you're going to park, knowing how long it takes to get to your building, and you never want to assume that everything's going to go according to the best case scenario. Even if you think you know the area really well, it might be worthwhile to check out ahead of time if there's any recent construction or if where you thought you knew there was a parking lot has changed. Another step to planning ahead is doing your research about the company so that you can be really well informed. Planning ahead also means anticipating possible questions they might ask you and having questions prepared for them. Not only will your interviewer have questions about you, but they will be asking you if you have any questions for them. Having questions for them shows that you're interested, so it does pay to plan ahead and have some prepared. The last part of JUMP is practice, and it's the part that people think is the least important, but I'm telling you, it is the most important part. People really don't like hearing it, but there really is no magic to this. Practice makes perfect, and it's really important to do if you want to succeed. Some suggestions that I give people is to answer their anticipated questions out loud in private until it feels conversational and natural to them. I've even told people to look in the mirror to see how they appear when they talk. People will tell me that they're worried about how they appear to a job interviewer, and if they're practicing in a mirror, they get a better idea of how that might look, and they can make adjustments as they go. I've heard people say that they didn't realize that they wring their hands or that they slouch when they speak. So when they do it in a mirror, they can see that and they can be like, oh, if I sit up straighter, if I sit with my hands in my lap, I'm less likely to fidget. And then they feel more confident when they do go into a job interview because they've practiced. Another thing to practice is using words and jargon that might not be familiar to you, and it's important to say those words out loud. Things like acronyms or company phrases that don't naturally roll off your tongue. You can't be expected to use these fluidly if you haven't practiced them ahead of time. There's a reason why people who are top performers make things look so natural and normal. Think about singers, actors, speech makers, even stand-up comedians. There's a reason why it looks really, really natural and people just enjoy what they're doing. It's because they've practiced. It's the difference between going and seeing somebody do karaoke when they're reading off the screen and somebody who's a top performer in an arena. Which performance do you want to give? One last thing to remember. It isn't your decision if you get the job, but it is your decision how much time, effort, preparation, and practice you put into the job interview. I hope this was helpful, and I've also added a tip sheet that you can refer to. If you find that you want to discuss this topic further or feel that you want additional help, you can contact any of the counselors in Learner Success Services. Learner Success Services is on the first floor of the South Campus of Bow Valley College. You can also make an appointment by phoning the receptionist at 403-410-1440. The better prepared you are, the less worried you're going to feel. So remember to put your attention and energy into things that you can control. I wish you all the best of luck in your future endeavors, and I hope this was helpful for you.